We welcome Tom and Vicki King.
All right. We decided today that we would use our forte piano because we don't have an opportunity to use it very often. This instrument is a copy of an instrument from 1784. The original was built by Stein in Augsburg. This was Mozart's favorite piano. And this is a copy built by a friend of ours, Brooks Morris, who lived in Santa Fe. And this instrument is tuned to A 430 rather than 440. And it was used as a continuo in several productions. After we bought it, we first heard the instrument in Dallas, played at the Dallas Opera as a continuo instrument in Barber of Seville, Rossini's Barber of Seville. After we bought it, Vanderbilt University borrowed it for their production of Così fan tutte, and it was used as a continuo instrument. Since we've lived in Bloomington, we haven't used it very much because it's hard to transport. But we thought it would be a good thing to play today because we have a small room and we can invite you into our home via Zoom. And what we decided to do was do a program on music from the days of George Washington. We traditionally in Friday Musicale do our November program as an American music program. And we decided to do music of the days of George Washington and use the forte piano. Uh, in Italy, this instrument was called the forte piano. In Germany, clavier. In England, pianoforte. And so what we're doing, the composers we're using today were not American born. Three of them settled in the United States and are considered American composers, but they were not native to this country. Two were English composers, but their music was done at the time of George Washington. We begin with two dances by Reinagel. Dancing was a very popular diversion in the 18th century America, and Washington himself was particularly fond of dancing. He was known for his elegant and graceful dancing of the minuet. The minuet and the gavotte were the formal dances of Washington's time. European composers were, of course, using these forms in movements of their suites and sonatas, notably Haydn and Mozart. Composers in America wrote prolifically for dancing. The first composer, Alexander Robert Reinagel, was born in Portsmouth, England. His father was a Hungarian professional pianist. Alexander studied with his father and then later with Rainer Taylor in Edinburgh. Reinagel went to London in 1763 and he met Mozart and Mozart's family the following year. Reinagel's first keyboard compositions were published in Glasgow and became popular in the American colonies. In 1786, he decided to move to America, move to the United States. He first moved to New York City, then moved to Philadelphia, which at that time was the capital of the United States. He helped to revitalize the musical life of Philadelphia in the 1790s, introducing that city to the music of Mozart and Haydn, as well as his own original compositions. One of Reinagel's admirers was the American president, George Washington. Washington was a frequent concert goer and could often be seen at Reinagel's concerts. One of the favorite things that I love to tell my piano students when they play music by Reinagel was that Washington's step granddaughter, Nellie Custis, was a piano student of Reinagel. So I always say Reinagel was Nellie's piano teacher. In Philadelphia, Reinagel worked closely with Thomas Wignall in producing opera ballets with the new company at the Chestnut Street Theater. Together, they produced 75 programs. Reinagel died in Baltimore, and he's buried at Old St. Peter's Cemetery, Old St. Paul Cemetery there. I will play the Minuet and Gavotte by Reinagel, and as was the custom of the day, on the repeats, I will play ornamentation. And now to the next composer. I forgot to mention that on a forte piano, the pedal is underneath the keyboard. So the performer's knee comes up from the floor and presses against the pedal. So it's not on the floor. Composer is, I'll play two minuets by Pierre Landrin Duport. Duport was a French dancing master who was also an excellent musician. He fled Paris after the storming of the Bastille, July 14, 1789, and immigrated to the United States. These are two minuets. The first one was danced before George Washington, and the second was a minuet danced before Mrs. Washington. Tom will sing.
I'll be singing The Bud of the Rose. So the words for this song are either 6 months too late or 6 months too early. But all of you remember what the bud of the rose looks like, with the dew on it, half open, and so on and so forth. William Shield is an English composer, and the piece is from 1782, first heard in America in 1786. And there were troops that would travel in America at that time to do these operas, and they would travel to New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New Orleans. We don't think of people traveling that far just for art, but I'm glad that they did. William Shield was also the house composer at Covent Garden, which is still well and good today, even if it's closed by COVID. So Covent Garden is famous to all of us in the 21st century, as it was to William Shield back in his time. Her mouth, which a smile devoid of all guile half opens to view, is the bud of the rose, is the bud of the rose, in the morning that blows, impearled with the dew, impearled with the dew. The bud of the rose, impearled with the dew. More fragrant her breath than the flower-scented heath, than the flower-scented heath at the dawning of day. The hawthorn in bloom, the lily's perfume, the lily's perfume, or the blossoms of May. Her mouth, which a smile devoid of all guile half opens to view, is the bud of the rose, is the bud of the rose, in the morning that glows, impearled with the dew, impearled with the dew. The bud of the rose, impearled with the dew.
The next composer is William Brown, whose real name was Wilhelm Braun of Kassel, Germany. And he was probably a member of a Hessian band. Some of you flute players will like this because William Brown was a composer and a flutist and a music publisher who was active in Philadelphia and New York City. In Washington's diaries and account books, there are numerous entries which permit a fair idea of what sort of musical affairs he was apt to attend. On June 12th, 1787, Washington attended a program in Philadelphia in which Reinagel and Brown appeared. This piece that I'm going to play is one of three rondos for pianoforte or harpsichord that was published by Brown. This is the first keyboard music to be published in the United States, a rondo by William Brown.
I'd like to say a few more things about Brooks Morris. Brooks was our friend for over 30 years, roughly 30 years, and we have owned three of his instruments. The most unusual of the three is the clavichord, and just a year ago, we decided to donate that to the Jacobs School so that the students there could get to use it and practice and know what a clavichord is. Clavichord is not usually a concert instrument, so they wouldn't have as many chances to play on a clavichord. And it's housed in on the third floor of Merrill Hall. All of you know where Merrill Hall is. The Wayworn Traveler was written by Samuel Arnold. And this was first heard in America in 1795. If you remember from your history, George Washington died only about 4 years later. So Nellie Custis, the step-granddaughter, actually performed this piece for him, obviously pretty soon before he died, because it only showed up in America in 1795. Samuel Arnold was an organist at Westminster Abbey and is also buried at Westminster Abbey. a sad unraveler of the mazes toward the mountain's top, doubting, fearing, while his course he's steering, cottages appearing as he's nigh to drop. Oh, how briskly then the wayward traveler threads the mazes toward the mountain's top. Oh, how briskly then the wayward traveler threads the mazes toward the mountain's top. Oh, so melancholy day has passed by. 'Twould be folly now to think once more. Blithe and jolly neither can hold fast by, as he's sitting at the goatherd's door, eating, quaffing, and past labour's laughing, better far when half in spirits than before. Oh, how merry then the rested traveller seems, while sitting at the goatherd's door. Oh, how merry then the rested traveller seems, while sitting at the goatherd's door.
And that concludes our program.